Okay, well, let's get started. Like I said, this class is going to be on loops. So an ornament loop is this portion of the ornament right here. And just kind of how you create that and make sure that it's the seamless, just kind of beautiful seamless round the ornament and then up into a loop and back down into the ornament, and kind of the way the cord interacts with the ornament, where it goes in and out of the ornament and crosses in front of each other. We're going to be diving into that because I see some kind of common mistakes sometimes that people make. Not even mistakes, but sometimes I think having a good grasp of like how the cord interacts and where the overlaps happen really gives you a lot of control of how you can or how to the appearance of your loop and how you want to make it, so you can kind of change it up a little bit. But that is what we're going to go over today. And then I'm going to show you one great little tip is if you don't love a loop that you've created, you can always cover it up with a bow, which are so cute anyway. Anything, just a little extra embellishment. So I'm going to show you how to tie a bow onto an ornament and then how to tack it down. So let me get you guys flipped here. Let's go up, and there you are, and my light's turned on. Okay, so here is probably, I wanted to show you guys an example of an ornament and a loop that personally is kind of ideal to me. Now, I will say that like all ornament finishing, a lot of it is just personal preference, or like all needlepoint, a lot of the stuff is just how, if you like the way it looks and how you want your ornaments to look. So I personally like this area of the loop base right here to be a narrow area. So what I mean by that is where these separate strings or cords that come off the ornament and create that loop, for those to be pretty tight together rather than wide. So I wanted to show you that and just show you what a finished one looks like before we dive in here. And this piece is from my wildflower background class, and I'm really happy with the way this one turned out. And just for reference, this is a DMC Pearl Cotton number 5 cord. So, and here is that other piece too with the ribbon that I'll be showing you how to do at the end of class. Okay, so here is a ornament, sort of an in-progress ornament. And what I've done is I have the cord here coming out of the ornament, and then I've wrapped it around and I've pinned it down. Now, normally, what I'm about to show you, the step I would do first, I would do that before pinning. But we're gonna go ahead, and I've got it pinned so I can just skip to the next step after showing you this. So first things first, I'm going to take a red pin and I'm going to mark my top center point. So this is just a blank canvas, but what you want to do is want to figure out the very top point or center point of your design, and then put a pin marking it. So if I, in this ornament, I would say, okay, they're going up like this, and I would say, okay, that's about my top center point. The design is facing up. Let me check this question really quickly. If you are doing a square or a rectangle, where would you place the beginning and end? Yeah, you know what? Let me go grab a square. I should have brought one along. Okay. So for a square, if you're doing a loop, you're going to do the exact same thing. Now you can see that the base of this is a little bit wider than this other one. And I would say in terms of personal preference, I prefer it to be a little bit narrower, a little closer together. But as you can see, it looks adorable. So it's, yeah, again, personal preference. But so you will treat a loop a loop the same on a square as you will on a round or an oval. If you want to do a hanger, now this is a specific type of hanger, but a hanger would also have a cord that goes up and down and attaches at the corners. That's its own thing. So yeah, that enters into the ornament and goes around, comes up and back down and into it in a different way than you would treat a loop. So I've marked my center point, and once it's marked, what I want to do is push it down a little bit. I don't want it too much in the way. Now, the first thing you're going to do when creating your loop is to take the end of your cord and push it into the ornament. So I'm gonna, stick it back down there if I can. And I like to use little scissors, not the safest thing ever, but we're just gonna push that in, maybe inch or so, half an inch. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to position it so that it is coming out of the ornament just to the right of the center point, like so. And then I would go ahead and I'd lay this down behind the center point, and I would then pin this around the ornament, which I have already done. So this is a little different. I'm going to have to push this because I've already pinned it. I'm going to have to push it in and position it a little bit here. Okay, but you can see that it's coming out to the right of my center point here. So this I would like to call point B. So point A is the very top center point mark, red pin, and point B is where the cord originally comes out of the ornament, where it then wraps around the ornament counterclockwise before reaching the top. Okay. So then what we're going to do with our cord is we're going to pin it all the way around, or now if you've taken my online ornament finishing class, you'll know at this point you would either sew the cord down, or you're gluing. If you're using glue, you're gluing as you pin. So we would get back up to the top here, and I could probably move this pin over a little bit. I'm going to pull this pin back up, the red center point pin, and I'm going to pin my cord down where it will rise up and off of the ornament. And I'm going to pin that down, and this is point C with the yellow pin. I'm going to pin that down to the ornament ledge right to the left of my center point. So you can see that it's really, really close. And that's where, I didn't do a very good job of pinning that. Hang on. Here we go. That's where the cord is going to come up. Boy, that's giving me some trouble. There we go. That is going to come up and off the ornament there. And then you're going to bring the loop up, bring it back down, and give yourself whatever amount of space you like for a loop. Personally, I like about 3 inches, but you can do anything. You can do it really, really long. You might have a specific application for it. You want it to, be able to fit over like an old doorknob, or it could be anything, but you can make your loop as long or as short as you want. I've seen loops even as short as this. It's totally up to you. But I like about 3 inches. And then what we're going to do is we're going to push this into our ornament behind this cording that has been pinned to the top. So notice that this cording, again, I believe I said this, but it's going in front of the center point before it rises up into the loop. Now, typically what I would do is I would bring it down like this, and then I would actually mark the where the cord would enter the ornament. And at that point, usually you have a knot here. I've already taken care of mine. You have a knot, but I put some glue on here. I would work it in, and then I would cut the knot off because I don't want to be shoving a big knot into my ornament. And then I would take this end and my scissors again, and I would shove that down into the ornament. Maybe squish a little glue down there if you're using glue. And see that I am pushing it down to the right, just to the right of the center point. So I'm going to position it so that it's entering the ornament right to the right of my center point. And that is called point D, where the cord is entering the ornament. And notice that as I've shoved this in, I've had to shove over the cord where it's coming out of the ornament originally. So that one is point B. Okay, so now that's how you get your loop. But there's a couple things that now determine essentially your loop and its success that I really want to just kind of dive into and point out. So the first thing is that point B, where the cord is originally coming out of the ornament, should be overlapped by about 1/4 inch by point C, which is where the cord rises up off the ornament. So the way we achieve this is by first inserting the cord to the right of the center point, and it then gets shoved over so that it's directly behind the center point. You can kind of see here. Let me try to, I don't know if it's a little dark, but you can see that it's coming out of the ornament really right behind our center point here. And so we've got this good 1/4 inch overlap between these two. Now, if you don't get that overlap, what's going to happen? Well, let's see what's the best way to show you this. Let me shove this in a little bit. And I have seen this sometimes. You're going to, whoops-a-daisy. Get that back in there. Come on. He was actually glued in and I pulled him out for this demonstration. So let's pin him in place. Okay. So this is what happens when you don't have that 1/4 inch overlap. And this is kind of an exaggerated issue, if you would, but sometimes even if you have if like your cord ends up kind of sinking down into the ornament a little bit there as you work, you just don't have this really pretty seamless cord all the way around that goes seamlessly up into that loop, and you just kind of don't even notice it, or that shift. So what you can do, it's really easy if you have that gap, or if you have your cord sinking into the ornament, you can always just put your scissors in there, stick them into the ornament. This is after we've sewn the ornament, but we've left that top open so we can still, get in there. And you can just rise that up off. Now, the other thing you can do is, if it's not sinking, but you have that hole, you can either, again, bring it up out of the ornament and position it so it's behind here, or you can just simply move your point C further over so that you have a good 1/4 inch overlap here. Now, if you do that, you can see now that I've moved my point, my yellow pin, my point C pin, further away from the center point. I now have a wider loop base. And that's the other thing I want to talk about. So essentially, the relationship between point C, D, and A is what determines your loop base and the way it looks. So you can absolutely make it super wide. That is totally up to you. I like mine narrow, but if you were to either put point C or D further to the left or the right of the center point, you're going to get a wider loop base. Whether or not it's both of them or one of them. And the way you fix that wide loop base is simply by making sure that those two are essentially touching the center point. And I've got ornaments done by finishers that where they almost meet at the center. Now what's interesting is that you don't get a good overlap here, so you got to be a little bit more careful to not see, where the cord is rising up out of the ornament and wrapping around. And I have found that I can still get that 1/4 inch overlap and a nice thin loop base by making sure that I pin point C where it's coming up and rising up into the loop just to the left of the center point, and then point D where it's going down and entering the ornament, by shoving it over, even with my sister's scissors, so that it's going down just to the right of the center point. So you can see that all of this looks really, really nice and tight in there. And then the last thing is to just be aware that all of the entering and exiting the ornament where you're seeing the cord ends essentially is happening behind to the back of the ornament. So we see this nice seamless cord from the front, but you can see this is where from behind is where the cord is coming out, and then from behind is where the cord is entering. So I have seen people put their end essentially in front and shove it down in front of the cord, so that then you're seeing that cord go down and enter the ornament, which just doesn't look as clean or as professional. It certainly doesn't ruin anything, but I love that just nice clean look. So that is how you get the perfect loop. So again, I think the two biggest things is just being aware of the relationship between where the cord rises up, goes into the loop, and where it comes back down to the center point, and making sure you've got that nice and close to the center point, and then having that 1/4 inch overlap between point B where it comes out of the ornament and then point C where it goes up into the loop. And again, where once everything is in place, once everything is like this, then what you're going to find is that your point B is directly behind your point A, so the center point. So hopefully that makes sense. I'm going to show you. If you do have a super wide loop and you're not a fan of it, you can always stick a bow on there and just hide all sorts of things. So I'm going to show you how to do that. And I did want to show you this ornament here, and everything's a lot tighter in here because it's coming to a V, but I've used the same principles. So you can see, it's a little hard to see here. But I've done essentially the same thing, and come out with the same look, where I've got sort of this seamless join, and then it goes into the ornament behind the cord. So you can do it with special shapes and tight little areas as well. Just everything gets much, much, much tighter. Oh, and before I forget, something I really like to do when I'm sewing down my ornament, so whether you glue your cord or you sew it down, you are going to sew across the top, because you've got this opening here that we've left open for our cord that we have to sew shut. So I love to put a few extra tacking stitches right at this point where the loop goes up, comes off the ornament, and goes back down. And that's just because I really love to have a nice firm sort of cording rise off the ornament, and just make sure that looks good. So I'll take maybe 2 stitches, I'll take the pin out, and then I'll pull the loop up and see how that looks. See how this right here looks. And if I need to, I'll go back and take a few more stitches until it looks just right. Okay, so let me show you, let me pull over my notes here. And let me show you the ribbon. Okay, so this is some silk ribbon. And really, it's just tying a bow. Now, I think, excuse me, if you can, I've been experimenting with just tying a bow and then tacking it to the loop base. But I think what's more common is to tie a bow. And honestly, bow tying, you know, I think that you kind of just got to fiddle with it. I haven't found one way that is kind of absolutely perfect all the time, but typically I will make my loop, bring it around. I tend to do like tend to twist this under, kind of like this. Let's see if I can get it this time. Whoop. There we go. And just play with it, essentially. Sometimes it's helpful, especially with like a silk ribbon like this, is just to get it really, really tight and then pull. You can see that loosens up the knot. So just essentially just play with it until you like the way it looks. And every ribbon, you know, ribbons are different materials, so everyone's gonna act a little bit differently, but I don't know, I think that's awfully cute. So at this point, I would trim my ribbon to the size that I wanted. But I also wanted to show you how to tack that down if you want it to stay put. So normally I would probably use like an invisible thread or a thread that matched the bow or the cording. But I'm going to show it with this kind of beigey color. And let's see, where's my thread end here? Here it is. I'm just going to use one strand of thread. This is just sew all thread. You could even use like a strand of floss. But yeah, sew all thread is good. So I put a knot, and this is just a sharp embroidery needle. Any kind of small sharp needle will do. I want to say this is probably a John James number 8 or 7 embroidery needle, is my guess. So what I'm going to do is actually kind of push the ribbon out of the way, and I'm going to take a little stitch through my cording. And I've got a knot there, and that's holding pretty good. Maybe I would, take another little stitch and do a holding knot here, where I create a loop and put my thread and needle through it and then pull tight, and that's going to create a knot. So then I'm going to go through my cord, again, pull this out of the way. I'm just kind of coming up. I'm going to pull it to the front behind my bow knot here. And then I'm just going to grab it with a little tacking stitch just on the back here, so no one's going to see it. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to shove it back through the cording and down into the base here. So I've grabbed a little bit of the back of the bow, and I've just shoved it all the way through to the back. And I'm going to pull that tight. So all we're doing is really taking a tacking stitch. And then I can really take tie a knot here, especially if you're using invisible thread or a thread that matches your cord. I could also, pull this back up and run it back up there so that all my knots are hidden. Depends on how particular you want to be. Typically, I don't worry too much about the back of my ornaments. So if there's something showing, I figure, I'm not going to see it most of the time. But I'm just going to do that loop, create that loop, and knot again. So take a little stitch, which creates a loop, put your needle through that loop, and pull tight. And then you're just going to trim that off. So maybe do 2 so it holds, and trim that off. And then just shove that bow back down. And all you're doing is just making sure that it actually stays on there. It's not necessarily going to keep, your grandbabies or your niece, or certainly not my nieces and nephews, from coming along and yanking it off, but it's gonna give it a little extra reinforcement. So that is, how you tie and attach a bow. And you really don't have to attach it if you don't want to. But yeah, let's see the questions here. Do you do anything to ribbon to keep from fraying? That is a great question. So, boy, I know you can use fray check. I would, I haven't in the past, or I feel like I have, but I'm struggling to remember what I did. Was it on this one? No, I didn't put anything on that end. So you could do a fray check. Some ribbon you can actually burn the ends, and that will kind of melt them like with a match. Or a fray check, or kind of worst case scenario, not worst case scenario, but it's a little extra work. You could actually tack the ribbon down. So you could do like take it with a sewing machine and either, flat or along the edge. You could, actually sew it down either by hand or with a sewing machine. So those are probably my 3 suggestions. Yeah. All right, let me turn comments back on. To tack the bow, could one use regular sewing thread? Yes, so that is what I am actually using. It's just to sew all thread. Here, let me show you a little bit more up close. So it's just a Gutermann sew all thread polyester, 100% polyester that you would use in a sewing machine. So for ornament finishing, I suggest either invisible thread or, honestly, I kind of strongly dislike using invisible thread. But it's much easier if you run it through beeswax or like a thread conditioner first. It's really, really nice because it's way easier to hide your stitches. But in terms of sort of the process, I really love using, just like a sew all thread. But I would suggest, matching it to, didn't mean to show you that quite yet. Matching it to, the cording or the ornament. If you're sewing the ornament together, matching it to whatever you're working with. So matching it to the bow. Let me see. We have a couple more. How many strands of number 5 do you generally use for your cording? Oh, great question. So I usually use anywhere between 8 to 11 is my go-to. Again, that's totally a matter of personal preference. I've seen thin cords. I tend to love a nice thick cord. I mean, you can see it's really framing the ornament. So I just love the way that looks. Now, sometimes, especially as you get to a smaller ornament, you can, you're going to want a thinner thread. So I believe I think this is 8, it might be 7. And this is a 3-inch ornament, as where this is, I think, 11. And this is kind of more, it's an oval, but it's more of like a classic 4-inch round. I think this is probably a similar, maybe more than 11. So Yeah, anywhere from 8 to 11 is typically what I like, but again, I would just experiment and see what you really like. And I do like DMC number 5 for cords. I like making my cords out of thread for 18 count canvas. So I tend to avoid like silk emery braid for 13 count or DMC 3, number 3. I just find that like number 5 or silk emery braid for 18 count thinner threads just look nicer, make nicer cords. I did want to mention this. If you want to see more about kind of embellishing a piece, I have a video on my YouTube channel about kind of creatively embellishing, and I walk you through kind of how to create this little flower arrangement and then how to tie the bow and tack the bow down to your ornament. If you're interested in more kind of creative embellishments. Thank you so much for the demonstration. Oh, it's my pleasure. Are you going to share a list of steps it takes? Oh, that's a great question. Where would I share that? Well, I certainly share it in my online ornament finishing class, which walks through the whole process from beginning to end with videos. But yeah, let's see where to put the ends and to do in what order. Yes, I would check out my class for that. All right, let me check out the questions here. Is there a formula for figuring out how much cord to make for your ornament? Yes, in fact, I created a calculator for my class. Kreinik suggests a 3-to-1 ratio. So you essentially have to do the math there. You figure out the circumference of your ornament and then how much your loop is, and then you take that number and you triple it. That's what Kreinik suggests, and I found it to be true for the Laces Cording Maker as well. At the top of the ornament, before you turn the cord, how much space do you not sew at the top? Yeah. I suggest, in my class, I suggest 1.5 inches, I believe. Just enough to get the cord in and out. Do you do stitching faces class? Carrie, what do you mean by that? Did you make the cording? Yes, I do make my own cording. Yeah, absolutely. I have a few pieces where I bought the cording from Joann Fabrics, and it's a really great way to go if you just get some neutral cording, if you're kind of intimidated by cording. But I wouldn't be. I would jump in, because as soon as you do, just your options are, your color options and your kind of sparkly options, and it's just so customizable if you can use any thread to create a cord. Well, thank you guys so much. I hope you have a wonderful night. As always, if you are ornament finishing or stitching or anything and you have a question, let me know. Comment on this. Will be posted to my Instagram feed after I've ended it, so you can always comment there or send me a DM asking me your questions, or tag me so I can see what you're working on. I love to. Thank you. Thanks everyone for being here. All right, have a great night. Bye-bye.